We're going to talk about 11 altcoins that I would genuinely buy, but it's coming from a different kind of narrative. This is coming from, will people use these in the long-term future? What will happen to blockchain technology, the different types of narratives that we've got, and maybe in the future. Now, this is the big premise here, that these are the startups of the new tech stocks in a way, but they are cryptocurrency digital assets. I think people forget about that. And we've got to look at the most obvious and the ones with the biggest teams, communities, but most importantly, use case. Let's get into the 11. So a obvious big disclaimer before we go on. This is my opinion of 11. I don't care if I've missed your coin, I really don't. Feel free in the comments to let me know. And as I've said, this is kind of on the premise of real adoption, right? So let's kind of get into it. It will be pretty long, this video, I do apologise. However, you may well get some nuggets out of it because I do often freestyle it a little bit, these videos, and I like to go over the top a little bit and I say some silly things, but most of the time it comes from a good place. But I think a lot of people are forgetting the obvious here. We are early with a lot of these altcoins, and as much as they do get dominated by Bitcoin, always have some Bitcoin, you may well find that in 5-10 years time you might be looking at it and thinking, you know something, I wish I held that coin. Just wish I held something, because you just don't know. That's the reality of this. Before we go on though, if you can subscribe, look what happened yesterday when I asked you to subscribe. It helped massively, but I think price appreciation also helped with the market having a little bit of a green spell. So like always, hit the like button and comment what you think and what you dislike about what my opinions are. So the first one I have on the list is AVAX, Avalanche. Been around for a little bit now, got a solid community, but it's also got some really good partnerships already. And that's kind of the line we're going down with this one. It's kind of obvious, create without limits, it's a blockchain, it's fast, it's scalable, it does multiple things, it's kind of obvious. But when you look at their enterprise side of things, there's some pretty big companies already using it. I don't really have to go along the lines of, well, I hope you understand what these companies are and their utility uses. This could well do very well when you think about the long-term adoption element. Look, obviously, like you know, bloody hell, like MasterCard, for example, right? MasterCard are a pretty big brand, you all know about it, but this is kind of the vibe we're going down, and I want to talk about that as an obvious kind of situation. Again, you can see here AWS. What if real life comes and uses the utility of these blockchains, right? And then that will obviously help massively. And I always say this, and feel free to write this down, but not everyone's an investor. I know it's fucking obvious, but we talk about the stock market. How many people drink Coca-Cola but don't actually invest in Coca-Cola? As an example, right? You got to think of the wider scope of the world, right? It's big, but not everyone will want to invest in, say, AVAX or Ava Labs or whatever, right? Same with any other asset I'm going to say here. But they may well use it via a little kind of web link where they're using something and they don't actually understand the gravity of it, and they actually are using it. So that, as I say, is the angle we're going down. As I've alluded to it, enterprise blockchains, there's a lot of them, and we'll talk about a few different types in a minute, but I think the obvious one will be AVAX. If we're looking at risk reward in a certain sort of vibe, is the fact that, well, AVAX is still on the weekly time frame below the EMA 21. We still probably could be at a point where, well, it's not too bad in terms of value proposition. That's important to note, right? Obviously, the high is here from the previous high of the year is up here, but ultimately the all-time high is all the way up here. Whether that happens with the token emissions and the outflows from, you know, the bear market remains to be seen. But, you know, as I've alluded to it, this could well become a $100 billion market capitalization asset when you consider how big technology is if it gets adoption. It's kind of a simplistic one. But when we talk about obvious situations and levels where we're going to go from the lows to the highs, we've already went and retested this area. It'd be nice if we go even higher and maybe go up even more. But there's certainly some multiples here, even though it's one of the highest ranked at the moment in terms of capitalization. Now, the next one is obvious, let's be honest, it's Chainlink. Chainlink has been around again for a while. It hasn't performed perfectly in the previous bull market, but it kind of had a little bit of an iffy kind of period with the DeFi world. However, the premise is to link the world. The Oracle, right? We talk about other companies such as Oracle around the stock market, and When we talk about digital assets, global markets on chain, this could be very interesting. And you can see here, look at the, you can see here, there's a couple of partnerships here. Obviously the NBA, Compound, big in the cryptocurrency market, obviously Maker. There's a lot here. The thing is with this, there is endless opportunities, and that's the thing, and we need to talk about that. And again, we talk about investing, and you're always backing certain things, and you might be thinking, you know what, there's potential here, there's huge potential here. And going back to the Coca-Cola kind of narrative, well, what if I said to you, well, in God knows how many years ago, there wasn't many Coca-Cola bottles sold when it first came out. Obviously things have changed, but you've got to back something to allow it to kind of happen. If you see a vision, you think, I like this, go for it, right? So you can see here, obviously, the transactions enabled, that's a big number. Powered by decentralized oracles, the security side of it, interoperability, developments, all that kind of stuff. And this, in my opinion, is probably one of the easiest to get into the real world. If we're going to talk about the obvious, right? When we talk about use cases, they're there, right? There's enough there to kind of get you going. Going to the enterprise side of it, the situation is, well, Associated Press, Vodafone, T-Mobile, Swisscom, AccuWeather. There's enough here to kind of get your teeth into. As I say, it is the starting point. And like I say, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years, but it's pretty interesting to see, right? In terms of Chainlink though, right, this is where it gets, I'm going to blow people's brains here. It did better in this time period in the BTC pair than it did in here because Bitcoin obviously ran. This has got, I think, a lot of multiples in it, right? When we talk about tokenizing the world and all kinds of good stuff. And funny enough, it's a sort of one that I was looking at buying not too long ago when it was going down to these levels. I just didn't bother in the end because I'm thinking I'm just going to stay heavy on Bitcoin for a little bit longer. The BTC part of this looks very toasty, but as you can see here, it's in a massive downtrend and it's still looking relatively low, but there's a lot of upside potential here. As I've alluded to it, going to the BTC pair, this is where I'm like, okay, this is why I'm waiting, right? This BTC pair is incredibly low, right? And as I've alluded to it, in 2020 and 2019, it was actually doing really well. And the market top was actually around here, this kind of weird ass area. It went way into the fucking stratosphere way before that. This is unbelievably low value right now. It's real high valued. And yeah, it's been falling down the ranks. And I think a lot of people are not really loving it as much as they used to. But I think there's a definite massive risk to reward here. I think in terms of the BTC pair, it's one to look out for. So yeah, Chainlink looks kind of a simple one. Now Polkadot. Everyone hates it because it has struggled. Price-wise, it's awful, right? And I'm perfectly honest to admit that, even though I'm deep in the world of it, right? Now, when we look at their website and stuff, and let's just get that loaded. Whole new website. The release in 2.0, the release in Jam as well. This has got a lot of potential in terms of technology, in terms of what it could be building long term. Yes, I know their marketing is very questionable. Some of the community members really do rub people up the wrong way, and I don't like the governance side of it. I really don't. And that's the thing, but ultimately, there's a lot of elements around this where it could be adopted in the long term, but there's a long way to go. This is the thing. It's a long way to go, a real long way to go with this. So it's kind of one of those ones where you're looking at this into the distance. When we talk about some of the apps that they're releasing, so they're going to have a big payment app, which is going to adopt a lot of things, which will be very, very useful. We've seen obviously as well big partnerships with IndyCar and I think Inter Miami as well. The stuff like that's really big, but in terms of the technology, it's probably going to be a bit delayed, realistically, in terms of cycle narrative. But it's probably one that you could probably think about longer term, potentially, in terms of what they're building, which is going to be very, very interesting to look at. In terms of putting the chart up, though, we'll start with the BTC pair. That just gives you an idea of where this is. Now, for some people will be like, that's dead. I'm not going to touch that. But there's also people that will be looking at that going, that looks like a really good opportunity. And I sit on that fence. I think personally I would put in some of my BTC into this just to add a bit more. My Polkadot bags are a lot smaller than they used to be, but I've been out of it for quite a while and I've just been sitting and waiting, right? In terms of USD, again, for most people, you can see there's a lot of kind of rummaging around. That's an old chart, bear with me, there we go. That's more, there we go. So you can see a huge consolidation. Now this reminds me of Ethereum in 2018. It also reminds me of Cardano in the previous cycle as well, where it's huge consolidation. It could absolutely blow up. A lot of people in my comments will be hating this. They'll be like, what the hell is this? It's absolutely shit. But one thing I will say is look into Gavin Wood and look into the technology they're building. That's the key word here, building. It's not built yet, realistically. What they're aiming to achieve is nowhere near built. It's a monster. But you are literally riding your hat on that. What they're building, what they're developing, and what they're going to deliver is kind of like the grey area, right? If you believe in it, go for it. It might well do very, very, very well in the long term. But if they get it wrong, it probably won't. I think, as I've alluded to it, the government's model has really, really ruined it a little bit. That's my personal opinion on it. That's all I'm going to say, though. Now, for me, a fantastic investment so far in terms of this cycle has been Nia. I've really liked Nia for a while. I've made a decent chunk of money on it, but I'm still holding and I'm still looking and seeing where this can go. So when we look at the Nia website, the idea is realistically, in an absolute nutshell, let me go to the main website. Blockchains Abstracted is to build an abstraction stack empowering builders to create apps. It's kind of like a Web3 kind of ecosystem that's going to build the web. That's kind of the multi-facet of it. They have the AI side of it, right? This is pretty big. The AI side of it is huge. Their master plan, feel free to read through it. They've had conferences with NVIDIA, and we're talking a lot of noise in terms of AI. AI is noise at the minute. We don't know what's going to happen long term. We don't know how much it's going to cost, what the element around, you know, the graphics elements to it, the GPUs and the powerage of it. It's kind of like mining like 10 years ago. What was going to happen with Bitcoin mining? Like, you know, obviously you think about that conversation, you think, oh, bloody hell, what could happen? Well, we know what's going to happen. It's kind of working, realistically. AI is kind of in that situation now where it's like, right, what is going to happen? And it's an absolute monster. Look at their ecosystem already. You know, there's a few things there. When you look at their main website and you look at who are actually as well using Nia, Sweat has got millions of users already for walking around. Obviously, you've got Google, Elgin Layer, you know, Alibaba. There's a lot here. But ultimately, AI, for a lot of people, is very much a bubble. And I understand why. It makes sense. It's come out of nowhere. And it kind of has got that little bit of a, oh my God, what if this is a big bubble? So need to be mindful of that. Also, most importantly, Nia Protocol has been around a little bit longer than most assets. It's already had its main releases, and now it's ranked 17. You know, something that I've really liked for a long time. And, you know, for a lot of people, when you look at the charts, you know, the FTX kind of crumble, that was a gift. So when we look at the Nia chart, I know it looks horrible, but this was at $20 at its all-time highs in January of 2022. And I was like, I'm going to wait and buy this. And I was buying down here. I was so fortunate to be able to buy it. And obviously, yes, in the BTC pairs, you'll see in a minute, it looks a lot better than the USD pairs. But as I've said, when you look at the BTC pair, you know, some of these orders down here was ridiculous. And I was literally taking some profit here because it was ridiculous, right? It was a real good gain. You got to kind of get those gains and then rebuy low. And I've already been looking to rebuy low as well. It's huge. But as I've said, there's a long way to go for Nia, in my opinion, especially with the AI side of it. It's still ramping up. It's probably one of the most obvious for AIs in the crypto space at the minute. And we're going to come on to some more in a bit. But I'm hoping AI is just the tip of it, just the tip of the iceberg. But we don't know. We're just going to be somewhat careful. So another really, I wouldn't say it's obvious, but render is a really interesting proposition for a lot of things. In terms of the website, distributed GPU render network. This is probably the most obvious if we're talking, let's go and use something that is on chain as a technology / service that could be interesting. And you can see here, transform your creative workflow with speed and scale with the render network, right? If you don't know this, any sort of thing to do with technology, if you're rendering an image or if you're doing videos, takes forever. And the GPU powerage is ridiculous. And cloud rendering made easy, secure, and affordable. It's fast, it's elastic, and obviously affordable. It's huge. People sometimes do not have the technology to enable it to happen on their own machines. So when we talk about how it works, this is a massive factor, and it could be the most obvious here in terms of, well, being able to do it. you know, being able to do certain things, you know, real-time distribution of your jobs across hundreds of nodes, right? Massive. I know the website, great advertisement, lads. You know, the website's not working, but you get the idea, right? And we talk about all these different startups that happened 10, 20 years ago that you now all take for granted. Look at the likes of Dropbox, for example, as a random example, cloud technology. Whoa, what the hell? Someone obviously thought something crazy. And you think now how an idea like that is now worth billions, right? Something like this could be very much adopted by normal people, and it could well save a lot of, you know, time. And there you go. It's all priced in the same kind of metrics that we all used to, which is good. Will it transpire into the blockchain side of it, of the render token? Potentially, yes. In terms of render holders, you can see here an ecosystem powered by render, huge, and all the stuff that they can do. Feel free to do your research, but you know, when we talk about obviously an ecosystem, this could be pretty interesting for people to use, especially in the technology world. In terms of the price of render, as I say, it's relatively newish. Kind of came out at a really bad time with the market collapse, and it went all the way down to like 50, 40 cents. It absolutely did a massive run. Huge, obviously with the GPU side of it, with NVIDIA, etc. But this is where it is right now. On the weekly time frame, we're still below the EMA 21. You know, we're not at these all-time high levels, realistically at $13. We're actually down at like the $6 levels. For some people, this might be an absolute bargain, right? When we talk about the market capitalization of this, bear with me, it's 3.1 billion. Most of its tokens are out as well, which is a big tick in the box. And you've got to think, well, how high and how big is that GPU world? Could be fair value, realistically. Now, one of my favorite assets at the moment is Stacks. Stacks is very interesting. It's a layer 2 for Bitcoin, essentially, right? Now, it is pretty slow. The Nakamoto update is going to basically make it like Ethereum, a lot faster, a lot more fluid. And that's where some of the elements around it is kind of obvious here. It's been slow and sluggish. So if you have been using it recently, it has been pretty slow. But now with this, it makes it feel like a genuine thing, which is brilliant. You can see here some of the news, relatively new, obviously coming to, it brings Bitcoin to Aptos, SBTC. We've also got the announcement of Solana as well on this, which is relatively huge. And you can see here, now this is the thing that makes me kind of like, ooh, Bitcoin is a massive, big ecosystem, right? And I think a lot of Bitcoin maxis didn't really get the point of this. And I think now they're starting to, and we're starting to see that kind of reflect in the price. I think this is undervalued massively because you think about runes, you think about ordinals, you think about the Bitcoin ecosystem, and you think about this untapped over $1 trillion in latent capital is waiting for builders. And imagine, right? And I just want to kind of put a point out here. The market cap of this is 2.8 billion. What if it does unlock a percentage of that Bitcoin kind of ecosystem and just go absolute balls to the wall, and we start to see a massive, massive uptick? This has done very well recently. It's not too long ago, realistically. Let me just show you the charts. Only recently just had an all-time high, which is, I don't know, here. We're now down here, right? This has got a long way to go, realistically, in my opinion. And now with most of the tokens out, we could start seeing this be a 10, 15, $20 billion asset, probably very, very easily. Because if you think about Bitcoin, you think about how heavy Bitcoin could be in terms of, you know, overall dominance and most importantly price. If price of Bitcoin is over the 6-figure mark, where will Stacks be? If people are going to build on it because it is now more a fast and efficient blockchain and it works a lot better, cool. Stacks before that upgrade was pretty sluggish. It's totally different. And eventually when the exchanges adopt it, be pretty awesome. So yeah, kind of, in my opinion, an obvious one, but everyone has different opinions. Go and check out their website. It's pretty cool. I am buying into some runes. If you don't know this, I am doing like a mini portfolio with Bitcoin, dollar cost averaging, but I've also bought a couple of runes for a bit of shit and giggles. It could be fun. Now, I know it's obvious, isn't it? BNB. Why is this important? Well, you got to think of the biggest exchange. You got to think CZ is out of prison soon. Not that it can work for them anymore, but you get the idea. This is the retail sentiment asset. And when you think about adoption, you think about, well, where everyone will go. Most people do go to Binance. They don't really go to Coinbase these days. They mostly go to Binance. It's just the way it is. So I would always say to people, right, keep an eye on Binance, right? I know it's quick, it's easy, it's simple, But for obvious reasons, if this starts going up, could be very good. So think of this as your cyclical kind of asset. Now, moving on to the obvious, it is Solana. Now, I know people are like, oh my God, this is like centralized trash. But I think this has fantastic potential to do the unthinkable, which is obvious. Flip Ethereum, right? I know, I've said it. You can see here powering all this of yes. Now, this is the thing. I think we're in a stage where we don't care about decentralization, right? I think that's where, going back to Polkadot, is where that's kind of failed, in a way. It's centralized, we know. There's a lot of elements to this that do have problems, we know. But it is a fantastic asset. It's fast, it's efficient. If you use their wallet, it's brilliant. I can't complain at all. I wish I bought it at the lows. I didn't. I chickened out. It's just the way it is. Now, you can see here all of these kind of stuff. It's fast. It's obviously, yeah, it is decentralized as a network. It's scalable. It's energy efficient. It has a lot of VCs in it. It kind of, you know what happened with FTX, right? It's just the way it is. But the main thing with this is, right, what makes a coin do well, certainly in this phase of the market, in my opinion, is community. We're at that stage of community wins everything. And I think eventually it will rotate into investment usage and utility use and how you can get that to mass adoption into real people. And I think Solana's going about it the right way because their wallets are like, your granny can use them, right? They're brilliant. We'll see how it goes longer term, but I think Solana would probably flip Ethereum. I do. I've got that horrible feeling. I wouldn't say it's a horrible feeling, but when we look at Ethereum, when we look at how Ethereum has dropped its dominance massively versus this, it's very interesting to see. It's got 10% to go, which isn't much realistically. When we talk about community side of it, we can talk about the events and all the stuff that's happening. Obviously, this just recently happened. Lots of stuff's happening. BTC is also enabled on here. Why not? Why not do it? Why not? It makes sense. So yeah, when we talk about the price though, let me just show you this. Not the best in the world, I'll be honest with you, but we probably will start to see it break its all-time high. Now, it's going to be much higher in market cap because of the emissions of this, but this has done well. As I said, chickened out of it. This is kind of a huge consolidation into a massive run. I'll make money trading it. It's fine. But when we start seeing this longer term, this could be a very interesting one for institutions. So we'll be interested to see where it goes. If it went, and I know I'm mentioning it here, but a lot of people do hold it. If it was going down to these sort of levels here, I would have been buying it, 100%. I'll hold my hands up. I missed the boat. I was tweeting about it saying I'm going to buy Solana when it goes down to $15. I didn't know, did I? Because I'm an idiot. Just the way it is, right? Anyways, Solana probably going to be the one that may well flip Ethereum. Sorry. Now, the reason why I say this, I want to just kind of put context on it so you understand it. This is the Ethereum.D. The dominance of Ethereum is dropping quite significantly. That's quite big. It's quite big, right? Whereas you look at the likes of Solana, it's doing that. See my point? BNB as well, as I've alluded to before. It's a retail asset coin. Look at how it performs. Where we're going right now. You get the idea, right? Going on to the worst ever launch. There was ICP. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I understand why people would avoid this. But this is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, right? This is a bit of a wild card. Now, the reason why I'm picking this one, and it's kind of obvious in a way, is more the fact of how it aims to be the kind of the one. And this is the interesting thing. We talk about real world utility use case. Obviously the AI models, right? On-chain swaps, all this kind of stuff. And the cloud enterprise gaming. This does a bit of everything. And this is why it's very, very interesting to talk about it. The problem I have with it, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, it has a maximum supply of basically unlimited. That's kind of like scares me. But when we talk about this really pissed a lot of people off because its release was horrendous. It was so centralized. They just dumped it all and it just died. I'll just show you. Yeah, get the idea. It wasn't great. But the reality is here, this has the most scope to kind of capture a big audience. And it really is interesting. I quite like the look of it. It is on my list to buy, literally. It's like, I've got some BTC to use. I might just buy this. As I've said before, unlock endless possibilities with internet computer use cases. You know, DAOs, crypto cloud services, games, NFTs, social media, right? As I've said, it's very much buzzword bingo. But when we talk about ecosystems and utilities and partnerships and using it, this could be very, very interesting, right? When we talk a little bit deeper on this one, this is the foundation that it's kind of led to, Dfinity. Now, again, we talk about a lot of employee publications, so citations, patents, right? We're a Swiss-based, not-for-profit organization with the largest R&D team in blockchain. There's a lot here. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of stuff you can get your teeth into. As I've said, if there's anything that's going to make it and get some sort of line of adoption because of persistence in an area, you're probably going to look at this one realistically. Annoyingly though, when I look at the BTC pair, I've got to put it in log scale, but this is kind of where we're at. We're at ridiculously low levels. This is where it kind of fell, and as I've alluded to it, people were just selling it off like left, right and centre. And it's kind of done a hard reset all the way down here. I feel like there's a lot of gains here, but not crazy amounts because of obvious reasons. You know, the BTC pair could be absolutely savage, but it wouldn't surprise me if we did start looking at like a 2 or a 3x at least, or, you know, going up to these kind of levels, which could be very interesting. When we look at the BTC, not the BTC, the USDT pair, again, you know, just melted, died all the way down here. This is in the log scale, by the way, because it looks like absolute dog's dinner. Regardless, I'll show you. Bear with me. Boink. So you get the idea in terms of where it could go. So yeah, there's a lot of, like, in my opinion, potential here. Certainly going up to these 35 and, you know, $22, $23 levels, 100%. Because when you look at the overall scope here, yeah, it's a 4.2, you know, billion-dollar market cap. Nothing crazy, is it? Realistically, it isn't crazy. So that could go crazy numbers if they get the adoption right. Everyone's favorite coin currently at the moment is this bad boy. Currently doing pretty well. Its full dilution market cap is the one that unsettles you a little bit. It's 15.5 billion. However, there's a lot of potential here. But regardless, right, we've got to look at the obvious. This is new. Most of its tokens are not out yet. It needs a good bull market. It will do well, but it may not be the best in terms of price if you cock it up. So be careful with that one. Now, in terms of the website, it's pretty fresh and simple. Massive amount of partnerships. You can see Red Bull Oracle. You can see obviously Alibaba Cloud. They are trying to do something with gaming. You can see that at the top. They've got like a little gaming PSP sort of vibe thing. And you can see here that their transactions per second is, you know, pretty ridiculous versus everything else. Not that speed matters. It doesn't, right? It really doesn't. It's more about utility use. Now, there's a lot of factors here that could be very, very interesting for a lot of developers to jump into. But ultimately, again, as I've said to you, there's a potential use case here that people may want to just buy this bad boy and just be like, yeah, sweet, let's just go for a seamless gaming experience. It's built on a blockchain. What? And then it gets people in. I know millions of people have always said, oh, you know what, like gaming's going to be the answer. And I'm still kind of on that fence of like, well, they've been saying that since 2016. Since I've invested, everyone said gaming's going to be the one that's going to take. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this is really ridiculous, by the way. As I say, though, it is relatively new. We've never really tested some crazy levels yet. It could go massively high. It could go to $6, $7, $8. But as I've alluded to it, when you think about the total emissions, fully released tokens, that valuation may be quite hard to hit. Look at NIA, for example. NIA is a great example. It's $20 in the previous cycle. Guess what? It's $5 now, and its market cap is way higher in the past. Same with the likes of Solana. So you got to be very, very mindful of that. And the final one is Bitten Soul. Again, very popular. Market capitalization 4.1, but it's full dilution nearly 12. Again, we're talking about a lot of dilution to happen. However, it is a bit of a beast. It's a good one. I was interested in this a long time ago when it was aiming to be a Polkadot parachain. They removed themselves away from Polkadot and went elsewhere to do it their own way. I fully understand why. But when we talk about pioneer the decentralized production of artificial intelligence, is huge. Again, it's all AI. AI is very much here. And it could well be the biggest thing going in the next 5 to 10 years. So going back to the start of the video, we talk about, well, what if some of these get adopted and they become absolute juggernauts? Well, we might be talking about them right now. Some of them at least. Got to be somewhat careful about it though, because we don't know what's going to happen. As I've alluded to it, this is relatively new. It was, you got subnets and all kinds of stuff like that in terms of how it's built. It's very, very different. But utility-wise, it could be very, very interesting, right? When we talk about the price of it though, this is what we've got. It's very much a stab in the dark. If you've done your research and you believe in AI, this alongside Nia and a couple of others, probably pretty good in terms of partnerships, what they got, what they're aiming to build and achieve. Again, there is that gateway into opportunity for people to genuinely use these without even investing in them and thinking about it, such as enterprises, such as obviously big, massive corporate companies, people, retail users, whatever it may be. So it's pretty big. And again, all depends on what you think in terms of your research. So there we go. I hope you enjoy. It was a long one, I know. But yeah, feel free to like the video if you enjoyed this. Come back to it, see what you think longer term. But yeah, these could be 11 assets that maybe do pretty well in the long term.